Thanks, Jen. Okay, so I've got the microphone, and you've got the questions. If you want to raise your hand, I will come to you with the microphone, and we'll do questions.
My question for the panel or suggestion is, now that the upper harbor is not going to be dredged, it's become a pretty shallow pool. Has there been any thought given to making basically a houseboat world up there? There's sewer, water, electric, all running along both banks. So that infrastructure is there. It would obviously involve stubbing in things, but the line capacity is there and the utilities. So.
Who wants to answer this?
I would say somebody should start a list of ideas, because I think we're going to see a lot of these. What has been opened up? The doors of the locker are closing, and other doors are opening. What are they opening up to? And I think we should get as many of these ideas on the table as possible, and then think about their possibilities.
I've got one person raised their hand here, and then I'll come back there.
Is there ever an analysis done to increase the capacity of this lock to make it feasible to produce more product? We have the infrastructure there, we got the Port Authority already there. It isn't like our resources are diminishing as far as our need as an economy for more grain, more hauling. That's not reversing itself, it's only going to be increased. Was there ever a survey done to increase this lock system to make it not as pinched, if you will?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the best answer to that, but both the upper lock, the lower lock, and lock and dam 1 only have the capacity for 2 what they call J-size barges to run at a time. So if you wanted to increase, you'd have to do all 3. So it's
23 locks in there, so about 150 million, and I don't know, lock and dam 26, the redo of that was close to $1 billion, maybe. So the economy is different. One of the things I would ask Janna about, in a way, and ask you to think about, and maybe Nan, it's clear that individual shippers benefit tremendously from this system. It saves them a lot of money. The question is, how much does the system cost to operate? What is the benefit-cost ratio? For every dollar we put in America, how many dollars do we get out? And I think that's maybe the crux of the issue here in part, versus like locking up 2 and downstream, where they see a lot of commerce. There's not much question, but up here, I don't know what the benefit-cost ratio is, but that's part of the equation. I think you have to consider. Janna's answer.
I think we also have to consider in that equation the cost of shifting trucks to the highway system and the impact of that congestion. And so those factors need to be considered in tandem. The analysis that was done by Tretis and the Metropolitan Council was a region-wide system analysis, and system-wide for the entire metropolitan area, it didn't show significant impact. But the pinch points that I've mentioned were identified, and there was no analysis done of those specific pinch points and the congestion impacts for those.
I think I saw some hands back here.
My question centers on clean, green, sustainable production of electricity. Is there any way, within the context of every other wonderful thing you're talking about doing, is there a way that we can accommodate, either in the lock itself or the derelict infrastructure on the sides of the lock, on the waterfront here, to have a field laboratory where innovative technologies to generate hydroelectricity would be able to be deployed literally in the stream?
okay. I think the question is for me. There are several hydropower proposals going on. Of course, you're maybe familiar with the Excel plant on the opposite side of Upper St. Anthony Falls. There are a number of other proposals that are in the works right now, and I think maybe your question is maybe an in-stream, okay, different kind of a dynamic proposal. And I know that that has been tried down at Lock and Dam 2, where they had a barge-mounted hydro generator that they could lower into the water, and they could capture the energy passing from an existing hydropower plant or an existing stream flow and generate power with it. And at Lock and Dam 2, they were able to demonstrate the technology, but they ended up disassembling that unit and shipping it downstream, selling it to somebody else. So it's doable. How much or how efficient it is, you know, I can't really say. But maybe this is a good point to talk about the other hydropower proposals that are going on around Upper St. Anthony Falls. There's a small hydropower proposal in the Artists with the A-lofts for generating energy just for one building across the river. On the core site, we have two proposals. You may be familiar with the Crown hydropower proposal. It was first going to be in the Crown Roller Building, and then it was going to be, or proposed to be on Minneapolis Parkland. When that proposal stalled about a year or so ago, Crown made a proposal to locate their facility on core land at Upper St. Anthony Falls. And I don't know if we can maybe bring a picture of the lock area. I can probably point it out. But so Crown Hydro is still trying to get their hydropower plant constructed, and they have until the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, who does the hydropower licensing, has given them until the 30th of April of this year to submit their draft license amendment. They already have a license. They were granted it in 1999, but they were never able to construct it. So now they've gone from one site to another site, and they're trying to get onto the core site as well. The other proposal for hydropower was Symphony Hydropower, and I think they made a proposal last fall sometime, and their proposal was to put a matrix turbine system right in the upper lock chamber, and so that would fit inside the chamber. And their proposal was that they could lower it down when they wanted to generate energy, and then they could lift it up to get it out of the way for flooding. And the Corps did respond to that proposal. We didn't think that with our continued role as for passing floods, you know, along with floods comes debris and ice, and we didn't think that an in-lock hydropower installation would work. We are going to meet, or rather, Symphony did ask us to meet with them, and we're going to have a little sit-down in a week or so just to talk through things and what our concerns are. We are allowing the Crown Hydropower folks access to our property. They want to do some subsurface investigations, and we are going to let them do that, and that's so that they will be able to put in their draft license application. And concerning hydropower, the Corps and FERC have a memorandum of understanding that we support hydropower development, and we try to support green energy. And that's why we're cooperating with Crown. We're trying to give them a chance. I know it hasn't been popular. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I saw another hand back here.
Thank you. Simple question regarding the dredging. Since there is not going to be a dredging barge above the falls, have you guys done any sediment modeling to see how the shoreline will be changing, or the flow going over the falls, etc.?
I might have to defer to somebody in the audience to answer that. Russ, did you want to try and?
Well, there has been. I'm Russ Snyder. I'm another project manager with the Army Corps of Engineers. I think the short answer is no, we're not modeling it. The provisions that were originally in the legislation that directed closure of the lock, that had studies and assessments, those were all stripped out. So we're not funded to do that. The local watershed district has requested a state grant to do exactly what you're talking about. The Above the Falls project in 1999, the first report, there is an appendix in there that talks about the potential changes. Basically, after we stop dredging, the sediment, the dredge cuts will act as sediment traps, and after a couple of years after those fill in, there will be some changes, probably returning to a condition more like the 1950s prior to the lock. But we'll cooperate with trying to get some navigation soundings so that if people are funded to do the modeling, they'll have kind of a base situation of how it was left when we stopped dredging.
I'm going to add to that. Actually, the Minneapolis Riverfront Partnership is working in concert with the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization and also the St. Anthony Falls Hydrology Lab to do the modeling that you're talking about and actually develop a study that will track over several years to understand exactly what happens when you do close a lock. So we have a funding proposal through LCCMR funding that will go before the legislature in a month or so. If that gets approved, then we'll proceed with that. So it's a very interesting question. We don't know for sure what the answer is, and it's not often that a lock gets closed in this manner. In fact, I think this is the first time, and so it's an unusual opportunity to study something like this. I'm going to go for this question right here.
I just wonder if you could make it really clear as to why the lock is closing. It's not a capacity issue or this or that. It's the spread of invasive carp upriver. And these invasive carp have already been seen as far upriver as Winona, and they can evidently get through the lock, is that correct? And go further up into Minnesota's lakes and streams and could really endanger our recreational resource of lakes and rivers throughout the state, because they are really kind of a nasty species. They have big teeth, they're big, they flip, they flop, they hurt people, and I think people really need to understand that that's why the lock is closing by federal law. Isn't that correct?
You want to put that in context?
Congress very clearly did not list a reason for why the locks were closing, did not want to set a precedent that could be used maybe elsewhere. So, Corps' draft EA, they outright say it's closing because of Asian carp. Again, Asian carp were the trigger. And so, two silver carp, the ones that jump, and big head carp were found actually in Pool 2 above Hastings. They could be right up to Lock and Dam 1 and beyond right now. As I like to joke with some people, I say, you ever try catching only 2 walleye in a 32-mile stretch of river? So the idea that, they caught 2, there's probably a lot more out there. The timing here is probably pretty good, given the risk. We don't know how long it will be before there's a reproducing population up here. They don't understand how many fish it takes to have a reproducing population. It could be 20 years. But, I think, for me, it's weighing the economics lost against the risk of this invasive species, these 4 invasive species coming in, and what might be lost. And I think the balance, clearly goes to the need to stop these fish.
Thank you.
Now that the river traffic will slow down significantly, I think great, people will actually be able to use it and access it. But then when I think of the increased truck traffic that's going to take place above the falls specifically, I have a lot of concern for neighborhoods like North, for example, who will be potentially inundated with truck traffic, which will have serious safety implications for pedestrians. and bicyclists as well, and really potentially create a serious physical barrier to the river, when what we want to do is allow people to provide ways for people to access the river. So my question is, what initiatives or efforts are being made to, if any, to better understand how we can potentially support neighborhoods above the falls so that they can have safe access to the river?
The Above the Falls plan and River First, Janna, which you were on, and actually my firm had a minor role as well, is a very ambitious and I would say community building based plan, and it has gotten huge support from the Park and Recreation Board and the City of Minneapolis. And I'd say at the core, one of the core principles of it is to re-engage the communities on both sides of the river with the river. And there's a whole series of strategies in that plan to do that. Now, I could certainly acknowledge that a bunch more trucks on the freeway or on streets would be a deterrent to a lot of the good planning there. But the question of the governments and the agencies looking out into the future to try to bring communities back to the river is, I would, from my perspective, very well and done in an enlightened way. And hopefully it'll happen along the lines that it has been laid out so far.
The only thing I'd add to that is I believe the 26th Avenue bikeway, which was part of the River First plan, has made it into the capital improvements plan for the city of Minneapolis. So, somehow planners are going to have to figure out how to have truck routes that hopefully aren't bumping directly into bike routes. And that will be a design challenge that I think needs to be addressed.
We have a large contingent here who recreates on the river. We're rowers, and particularly in the Pool 1. And so we have questions about Pool 1. Will the buoys stay? Will there still be traffic? Will there still be dredging? What does that mean for Pool 1?
Yeah, in Pool 1, which goes from Locking Dam 1 to Lower St. Anthony Falls, there still would be dredging, but maybe it would need to be as aggressive as it needs to be for commercial towboats. So yes, it will still be maintained. I think that the cruise boats will still be operating, and of course any kind of recreational vessel would be able to operate. And you'd have to recognize that there's going to be less opportunity to walk through Lock 1 and Lower St. Anthony Falls, and maybe that would get into an area where more portages would be needed because there's going to be less opportunity to move back and forth.
What about the buoys?
There was a question about the buoys.
The buoys. I don't know specifically about the buoys. I would guess they would remain.
Other questions?
I have two questions. One is, those locks aren't being used for 5 months a year, sometimes 6 months or more. What happens to all that employment, economic activity, and traffic when the locks are closed for half the year? And the other question is, what is and this is really important to me because I'm going to be writing about this, what is the total budget for the two locks, including maintenance and personnel and all that? What is the total cost for operating those and keeping them open?
I can handle the first one. They've managed their businesses to have a lot of stockpiling going on. So, get a lot of stuff up there in the fall, stockpile it, from the aggregate perspective, stockpile it in the fall, make it through till spring, then, really pump it up again during the summer. And so I think they've had seasonal ebbs and flows, but found ways to manage their business, recognizing those seasonal changes. And I'll let her handle the cost. It's somewhere in, or maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know the specific cost of operating the 3 locks. I didn't bring those statistics with me, but that's definitely something we could get. What?
It's in her report.
It's in your report?
Yeah, 3.72 million. That's at least that's something that goes to slide.
He said 3.72 million, and was that for all 3 locks or one lock? Per year.
I live on the river, and generally in the summer I see one tugboat and 2 barges going upriver and coming back in the afternoon, and that's about it. What is the actual traffic of barges on the river up above this lock and dam right here, up above the fall?
I think per day they were averaging maybe 6 lockages or more, maybe 6 to 8 lockages. Do you want more specific information than that? Or? Those would be the commercial barges, probably. Have 2 barges going up commercially and then coming back on the round trip. But there would be other lockages with recreational boats, canoes, motorboats, things like that. But definitely the usage has gone down over the last few years, and I think roughly 1,000 lockages, maybe. I'd have to look that up. But maybe this would be a better source. The Corps did just post on our public website the lockage data for this last year, so that specific information is available on our website, and it was posted maybe within the last couple of weeks, maybe 3 to 4 weeks.
I think all those numbers need to be taken into consideration of economic cycles, and certainly our economy has been challenged until since the recession until right now we're picking up again.
I just see some questions over here.
Sorry, it's a long way around.
I know that they're planning on adding a bunch of portages and carry-in access and carry-out accesses in the central Riverfront Park Plan that they're going to be implementing in the next several years, or that's hopefully going to be approved soon. The Minneapolis Parks and Rec Board is. I'm wondering if there's anyone here on this panel, or if the Riverfront Partnership has it on their radar at all to put in temporary portages. I know the Tyler Peterson from the Park Board I've been in contact with, and he's trying to work with the DNR and the Army Corps specifically about put-ins and takeouts for the interim before they start really finishing up all the park stuff that they're going to be implementing soon. So, but this summer portages will be needed for through paddlers and other recreational paddlers. I'm wondering if anyone here has had that on their radar or is working on that at all. Because it is actually kind of an important safety thing for paddlers coming through to have someplace they could put in and take out so they don't go over the falls.
I was going to call on Commissioner Breland. I don't know if you've had conversations. We are well aware of the issue, and I think Tyler, I don't know if you want to comment on it. Can you?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I'm Tyler Henderson. I work for the Minneapolis Park Board of the Planning Department. The really, really cool, good news about the riverfront here is we've got an awesome trail, bike trail, and ped trail along it. So we don't have to put in, a mile of accessible trail. The hard parts are going to be working with other folks, other landowners, to actually get portages in a timely manner so that those guys that are coming down from Itasca in June have a place to go. And there are some now that are accessible, we just have to formalize them.
Got time for, I think, just a couple more questions. Come back here.
Hi, my name is Olivia Dorothy with American Rivers. I have one comment and one question. In one of the slides, I saw some data about barges' fuel efficiency put up there. I think it was you listed something like 650 ton-miles per gallon. The barge fuel efficiency on the Mississippi River above the Missouri River confluence is actually only about 430 ton-miles per gallon. Trains in this region, regular trains are 500 ton-miles per gallon. Unit trains, which are those really big long trains that carry lots of the same things, the same destination, that's 750 ton-miles per gallon. So when you're talking in terms of fuel efficiency and carbon emissions, barges are not better in this region. And yes, I do. I just want that to be corrected in future presentations and information for you guys. Yes, my question for the Corps of Engineers, you said you were going to do a beneficial use study or a disposition study. What's the difference between those two studies and the funding revenues, funding streams for them?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last part?
You said you were going to do a beneficial use study or a disposition study. Like I've heard of a disposition study, but I've never heard of a beneficial use study. So what is that?
My thought is that it would all be part of the same effort. And again, what I was trying to differentiate is beneficial use would come into play if the Corps is still going to operate the lock or have a presence there to own the lock. Why couldn't we put the part that we're not using to more beneficial uses? Why couldn't we allow somebody in? So that's what the beneficial use part of it would be. And the differentiation I was trying to make is that if we're going to dispose of it, we just get rid of it and let somebody else do development. But if we're told that we have to keep operating it, keep owning it, that's where the beneficial use would come in. And that's the type of thing I think that we need to be going to.
One last question. Oh. Whitney?
Nice to have people looking out for me. Back here, Whitney Clark with Friends of the Mississippi River. I have just a quick comment provoked by a couple of the questions and the responses, and that's about the potential benefits. And I think in Minneapolis, and even in a crowd of river lovers like this, we may be taking for granted the incredible above the falls plan that has been in place now for more than 10 years. That will transform this formerly almost entirely private river from the falls to the city boundaries into wonderful parks and trails on both sides of the river. I grew up in South Minneapolis with a wonderful legacy of parks and trails around the lakes and Minnehaha Creek, and of course the great parks along the river through the gorge. What an incredible asset that is to our communities, to housing values, and to kids who grew up in those neighborhoods and had access to those parks. In North and Northeast Minneapolis, those neighborhoods and those residents have been largely shut off from that legacy of parks and have not had access to the river. And we're at a moment now, we're beginning a transformation to correct that. And that is going to be a massive, massive transformation. In my work, I work with cities and communities and neighbors up and down the river through the whole Twin Cities corridor, the whole 72 miles. And I don't know if people realize, this will be, the above the falls change will be the most significant transformation of the river that will happen in our lifetimes. A massive, massive land use change. And they're not doing that in other communities. And we're doing that, and it's a change for the good. It's a public-spirited change that's going to be giving the river, this incredible river, back to the communities. So Tom, you mentioned this in your comments, but this is coming. And the last thing I would say about that is just another comment is the plan is the plan, but it will need to be defended. It will need to be advocated for because there will be continued efforts to whittle it away, to sand it down, to reduce the public benefits and increase the private benefits. And I think we have to be, those of us who care about parks and care about the ecological health of the river, care about neighborhood access, and care about getting kids back to nature, we need to be there ready when these decisions are being made about how wide is the park, how close is the trail going to be to the river, what is the programming for the park going to be. We have an excellent park board, and they're going to be strong advocates, and we need to be there to support them. The National Park Service is echoes focus. Thank you.
So very well said. I think that's the closing remarks there. The one thing I'll add to that, John said earlier that this is the time to start making a list because this does create all kinds of new opportunities for us. A couple of those came up today. I think the first one was the houseboats, having a dream of a houseboat village up on the river. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I particularly want to thank our panelists, Tom Meyer, Janna King, Dan Bischoff, and John Anfinson for their thoughtful comments and also their answers to questions. I also want to thank Jacob Fry for being here to kick off the event. We also have Councilmember Yang is here from the Park Board. We have Meg Forney as a Park Board Commissioner, Scott Vreeland and Liz Walensky, so I appreciate that support. And our next, our next forum will be on April 30th, so stay tuned for that. And finally, I want to thank our sponsors tonight. The Minneapolis, the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization is a series sponsor of these forums. And then for tonight, CenterPoint Energy, Excel Energy, and the Mill City Times helped to sponsor this forum, and the Mill City Museum gracefully offered this space for us. So this has been a great place to be. So thank you again for joining us tonight, and appreciate all the questions. And clearly this is just the beginning of dreaming about what the impact of this lock closure will be. Thank you.